Hi, this is Cindy from Pet Pangea, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about how to compare nutritional levels between different foods. And in particular, what I want to talk about is wet food versus dry food. How do you compare if you're interested in a certain nutrient, for example, like how much protein would my pet be getting on this food, between a wet food and a dry food? And I see a lot of misconceptions out there on doing that comparison. A lot of times people will look at the percentage of protein on a canned food and they think it's, quote, low protein, when really it's not. So let's talk about how you do this. So here's our example question. Which product has more protein in it? On this bag of dry food, it lists that we've got 30% protein, 11% moisture. And on this canned food, 9% protein, 78% moisture. So that's what it says on the labels. The labels, unless it states otherwise explicitly, it's going to be as fed. So those percentages of protein are including the water weight. So why is that important? Well, your pet's not getting calories. They're not getting nutrients from that water weight. It's not to say that it's not good to feed wet food. Actually, I much prefer, both for dogs and cats, wet food because it does help keep them hydrated. Particularly, we are in a really dry climate. And if they have any health issues like a kidney issue, you really want to keep them hydrated because sometimes they are not conserving their water properly through their kidneys, and dehydration can lead to a health crisis pretty quickly. So how then do we compare these foods? If we want to know how much protein our pet's going to get on a particular food, how do you compare a dry food with a canned or a wet, some type of wet food? Well, the first thing we need to figure out is what that dry matter content is. And the reason we care, again, is because dry matter is where they're getting their calories from. You're going to have to feed more of a wet food because you're feeding some water there, and that doesn't have calories. So we really want to compare these foods. If we want to know absolutely how much protein is my pet getting, we need to compare the dry matter basis. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, what's dry matter? Well, it's what isn't wet. So what we're going to do is take 100 and subtract that percentage of moisture from it. And then we'll get our dry matter, because if it's not moist, it's dry. Okay. So canned foods, very typically, like our other one, they have a moisture content around 78%. Kibble usually has a moisture content somewhere around 10%. Then what you're going to do is take whatever nutrient you're interested in, and that's on the label, say if it's protein or fat or anything like that, and you take that and divide it by the dry matter percentage. And then you can compare the foods, because now we've taken water out of the equation. So if we looked again at these particular comparison between these foods, first step we would do is want to figure out the dry matter percentage. So for the dry food, we end up with 89% of that is dry matter. And if we take the protein percentage that was on that label, 30% divided by 89, we get 33.7% protein. Doing the same thing for the cans, figure out our dry matter is 22%. Take our protein level, and you get your percentage of protein on a dry matter basis. So for every 100 grams, for example, of this dry kibble food, you're going to be feeding 33.7 grams of protein to your pet. On the canned food, for every 100 grams of actual food, not water, you would be feeding 40.9 grams. So as you can see, the quote 9% protein food is actually higher in protein content. Your pet's going to get, if you're feeding the same number, keeping other things equal, you're not feeding fewer calories or less food, the pet would actually be getting more protein on the dry matter basis than the 30% protein food. So again, I just want to make sure this is clear, because sometimes people will come in and they'll look at the cans and they think that it's low protein, and in fact it's actually not. Kibble does need some starches for them to be able to get that kibble to stick together. So I hope this helps you making informed food choices for your pet. Thank you.